Prince Harry's long-running fight over security in the United Kingdom has entered a new and revealing phase. For years, the Duke of Sussex has argued that he and his family cannot safely return to Britain without the level of official police protection they once had when he was a working royal. His position has always been emotional, personal, and easy to understand on a human level. He is Princess Diana's son. He grew up under intense public attention. He has spoken about threats, press intrusion, and fear for his wife and children. And he says he does not want to expose Archie and Lilibet to danger. But the latest reporting around the delay in his security review changes the frame of the story. It suggests that the question is no longer only about Harry. It is about a British protection system under pressure, a limited pool of armed officers, a country dealing with heightened political threats, and a former working royal who still appears to believe his case should sit near the top of the list. That is where the public reaction becomes so sharp.
Him coming to the UK, he doesn't need armed security. He really doesn't need armed security. He is not, despite the 5 risks that he says he's vulnerable to, which you and I covered on the last podcast, none of those really put him above anybody else.
Harry lost his automatic right to the same publicly funded police protection after he stepped back from royal duty in 2020 and moved abroad. Since then, the argument has been repeated in courts, interviews, public statements, and briefings. Harry says his status, military service, family history, and public profile create special risks. The Home Office and RAVEC, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, have taken the position that he no longer fits the same category as full-time working royals and should instead be considered under bespoke arrangements when he visits the UK. In May 2025, the Court of Appeal dismissed his challenge over those arrangements. The judges acknowledged that Harry's feelings were powerful and moving, but they did not accept that his grievance translated into a legal basis for overturning RAVEC's approach. Now, the story has moved from the courtroom to the practical machinery behind protection. Reports say Harry has been waiting for a renewed risk assessment, but that the process has been delayed because the system itself is stretched. The same pool of people and agencies must consider not only royalty, but also senior politicians, former prime ministers, serving ministers, public figures, and individuals whose threat level may have changed because of current events. In other words, Harry is not standing in a private queue marked Duke of Sussex. He is part of a national security triage system. And when that system is facing pressure, the question becomes brutally simple. Who actually needs scarce official protection most urgently? This is why the comparison with former prime ministers matters. Britain has had an unusual churn of leaders in recent years, and former prime ministers can remain high-profile targets long after leaving office. They may still travel, speak, advise, appear publicly, receive threats, and represent decisions made while they were in power. Some may need close protection, residential security, transport planning, intelligence monitoring, or varying levels of police involvement depending on their circumstances. That does not mean every former prime minister receives the same package forever. UK protection is not as automatic or simple as the American model for former presidents.
To see the evolution of this story, Prince Harry is still waiting for a decision on his security arrangements in the UK. And now we're learning why that process may have stalled. Harry, as we've discussed a million times before, has lost his automatic rights to armed police protection after quitting his job as a working member of the royal family and moving to California. But according to new reporting, his latest security review has been delayed as officials struggle with an increasingly stretched protection system, including, and this had never occurred to me before, but it's so obvious.
But it does mean the security apparatus must constantly assess people who have held the highest political office in the country. When commentators talk about former prime ministers requiring teams of officers, the numbers quickly become sobering. A close protection team is not one person in a suit standing beside a car. It can involve multiple officers rotating through shifts, advance work, drivers, route planning, residential security, contingency planning, and coordination with local police. If several former prime ministers require support at the same time, the demand multiplies fast. And that is before the system even gets to current ministers, high-risk MPs, senior royals, judges, diplomats, visiting dignitaries, and major public events. Against that background, Harry's argument starts to look different. He is visible, controversial, and historically important. But he is not a serving public official, not a working royal, and not carrying out duties on behalf of the state. The Ravik process is not supposed to be driven by celebrity, pressure, or emotional force. It is supposed to be driven by risk. The basic logic of professional threat assessment is not who is famous or who feels unsafe. It is capability, intent, vulnerability, likelihood, and impact. In simpler terms, officials ask whether hostile actors exist, whether they have the means to act, whether they have a specific intention, whether the protected person is exposed, what would happen if the threat materialized, and what level of mitigation is proportionate. That kind of process is slow, careful, and often secret for obvious reasons. Revealing too much about who is protected, how they are protected, and why they are protected would itself create security problems. This is one reason Harry's public campaign is so difficult. Every time the story is discussed in public, he is inviting debate about threat levels that the state normally refuses to detail.
We know about Ravik. Everybody knows about Ravik when it comes to Harry. And Ravik are the oversight group, which basically will deploy various different security measures to the protection of royalties and VIPs, and they're the executive committee. Then you've got underneath this the risk management board. Now, these are the guys who basically will put together the risk assessment on each individual that they're requested to review. Now, that could be ministers, it could be high-level politicians, it could be cabinet ministers, get my teeth in today. But it really works on a couple of basics, which is capability plus intent, which will equal the threat and vulnerability, which equals the likelihood of that threat presenting itself, and the likelihood and impact, which is the risk that ultimately they have to.
The government repeatedly says it does not provide detailed information on protective arrangements because doing so could compromise security. Harry, however, wants the public to understand why he feels unsafe and why he believes the system has treated him unfairly. Those two positions are hard to reconcile. The more he speaks, the more political and personal the dispute becomes. The more the government stays silent, the more his supporters say he is being ignored. But the silence is not necessarily indifference. In security matters, silence can be part of the protection. There is also the issue of armed protection. Harry's side has often stressed the need for police-level security because private bodyguards in the UK do not have the same powers, access to intelligence, or ability to carry firearms as official armed police. That is a real distinction. Private security cannot simply replicate state protection, but that is also exactly why the state is cautious about granting it. Armed police protection is not a luxury product that wealthy people can purchase when they want a higher level of comfort. It is a public resource tied to state authority, intelligence access, legal responsibility, and public accountability. If the system allowed any wealthy former public figure to buy into that structure, the precedent would be enormous. Harry has said in the past that he was willing to pay for his own police protection. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. If he can afford it, why should taxpayers object? But the problem is not only the bill. The problem is control. Official protection involves trained police officers, access to intelligence, coordination with state agencies, and powers that private citizens cannot buy. If the UK began selling that package to individuals who are not serving the state, the system would immediately face pressure from billionaires, foreign VIPs, celebrities, political donors, and controversial public figures. Each could say, I am at risk too, and I will pay.
There's going to be all sorts of other sort of lower level of security that each of these people have. Now, for the executive protection, the bodyguards, you're going to be looking at 15 officers per prime minister. So just for the number that we've got, we're looking at about 135 to, including our new Prime Minister who's come in, looking around about the 150 officers mark, which is a heck of a lot.
The result would not be fairness, it would be a state security market for the rich. That is why the Nigel Farage comparison is useful but limited. Farage has also been at the centre of debates about personal security, threats, and private funding. Reports about a large private gift, he said, was connected to his security have generated major political questions of their own. But private security funded by a donor or by personal money is not the same thing as official RAVEC protection. A public figure can hire bodyguards, drivers, consultants, risk advisors, and advanced teams. They can harden their home, vary their routes, reduce exposure, and plan events more carefully. What they cannot do is simply purchase the powers of armed state protection. Harry can pay for private protection, like other wealthy public figures. What he wants, or at least what he continues to seek, is something different. The strongest argument against Harry's case is not that he has no risk at all. That would be too simplistic. He is a globally known figure. He served in Afghanistan. He is tied to the monarchy. He has attracted intense hostility, and he has a family whose privacy and safety matter. The stronger argument is that risk does not automatically equal entitlement to the highest level of publicly controlled protection. Many public figures face risk. MPs face threats. Former ministers face threats. Journalists face threats. Religious leaders, campaigners, judges, and controversial commentators can face threats. The state cannot place everyone into the same category. It has to decide where the danger is specific, credible, current, and severe enough to justify exceptional protection. That wider context has become darker since the killing of Anne Widdecombe in July 2026. The official investigation is ongoing, and police have urged caution around speculation about motive. A suspect has been charged with murder, and counterterrorism police have said that possible political motivation remains an active avenue of investigation. That detail matters.
But, she was in a situation where this individual turned up. Our police authorities are being rather quiet about it. It is being aligned to terrorism. But that's another impact to the Risk Management Board of other MPs outside of the inner circle, if you want, that they now have to start regarding as possible risks or individuals that could be targeted and could be deemed as vulnerable, like Anne was, for some lunatic to turn up with a hammer and kill.
Because it changes the atmosphere around public life. When a former minister and well-known political figure is killed in her own home, every risk board and security advisor has to look again at assumptions about vulnerability. People who might once have seemed lower priority can suddenly look more exposed. Local offices, constituency work, staff safety, event access, and home security all become urgent questions. That is not theoretical. MPs' staff have already described threatening messages, abuse, fear for their safety, and concern that protection often follows the MP but not the people working around them. A democratic system depends on politicians and their staff being able to meet the public, hold surgeries, attend events, and operate without intimidation. If security resources are limited, the state has to prioritize the people whose public duties require exposure. That is where Harry's position becomes harder to defend politically. He no longer performs royal duties. When he comes to the UK, he is usually coming for private reasons: charitable events, court cases, media-linked appearances, family meetings, or projects connected to his own work. Those may matter, but they are not state obligations. The Invictus Games are the important exception. Harry's work with injured and sick service personnel through Invictus remains one of the strongest parts of his public life. It is meaningful, valuable, and rooted in something real from his military background. When Harry is focused on Invictus, he still has a public purpose that many critics are willing to respect. The problem is that even Invictus appearances can become overshadowed by the Harry and Meghan drama. Instead of the headlines staying on veterans, rehabilitation, resilience, and sport, the story often turns into security demands, family reunions, Meghan's presence or absence, royal accommodation, court losses, and palace tension?
A bit of both, Kinsey, a bit of both. So in terms of the capability, yes, there aren't enough officers. I know for a fact that the government or the Home Office are certainly going to the private sector to bring in more qualified, and I use that word very loosely, close protection officers. Now, I'll be careful what I say here, but there are certain aspects of quality that are not commensurate to the current and existing RASP officers. Certainly the ones that I know who are consummate professionals, extremely experienced. Some of the guys coming in, I'm not sure are necessarily to that level, which in itself presents its own issue.
That weakens the cause by pulling attention away from the people Invictus is supposed to serve. The recent UK visit cycle illustrated that problem. Plans around Harry, Meghan, the children, Invictus, and a possible meeting with King Charles became tangled in reports about police protection, palace accommodation, court battles, and whether the family could safely be in Britain. At one stage, sources close to Harry said he feared his children could not be brought if they would be chased by paparazzi from the moment they arrived. Yet later reporting suggested the family did manage to come in and out of private royal settings discreetly, including a meeting with the king at Highgrove. If that is accurate, it complicates Harry's argument. It suggests that careful planning, private arrangements, and controlled movements can reduce risk without automatic armed police protection everywhere. This does not mean Britain is risk-free for Harry. It means the public narrative of impossibility becomes weaker if the family is able to visit quietly and safely under certain conditions. Security is rarely all or nothing. It is route planning, timing, venue choice, discretion, communication discipline, and cooperation. A visit to a secure private estate is different from a public walkabout. A charity event with advanced planning is different from a spontaneous public appearance. A court arrival in front of cameras is different from a private family tea. RAVEC's role is to assess those differences, not to provide a blanket answer based on status alone. That is why the demand for automatic protection is so difficult. Harry appears to want certainty before he travels. A guarantee that when he comes to the UK, he and his family will receive the kind of official support he believes matches the threat. The system, however, appears to prefer case-by-case assessment. Where is he going? Why is he going? Is the event public? Is the threat intelligence specific? Is the venue secure? Is there a royal residence involved? Is the visit private, charitable, or connected to state functions? Those questions matter because they prevent protection from becoming a status symbol. The system is meant to protect against risk, not preserve rank. There is another uncomfortable point,
which is, Nigel's not sending a bill to RAVEC for his own personal security, which is being financed by a sponsor. So he's paying for his own security, which is exactly what Harry's doing right now. He's paying
and are they
for his own
armed?
security.
Are they armed?
No, they're not armed. And I'll come to that because this is another really weak argument that Harry has, which is they need to be armed. They need to be armed. I'll come to that one. I'll just finish if I could on this one. So to cover on this point, Harry's paying for his security. Nigel Farage, who is a serving MP of a leading political party here in the UK, who is more merited to have Home Office issued security via RAVEC, has decided, no, I'm not going to have the RAVEC provided. I'm going to pay.
Publicity can increase the need for security. Some high-profile people manage their risk by becoming boring, predictable only to their security teams, and hard to track publicly. They do not trail their movements in advance. They do not build drama around every trip. They do not turn private plans into public suspense. Harry and Meghan have often said they want privacy, but their public life is built around controlled visibility. They release images, grant interviews, shape narratives, and allow speculation to run around their movements. That does not mean they invite danger, but it does mean they operate in a publicity environment that complicates security. If Harry wants a lower risk life, one obvious answer is to reduce the public temperature around his visits, do less briefing, avoid turning every UK trip into a referendum on the royal family. Keep charity work focused on the charity. Do not make security the headline unless there is a concrete and urgent reason. Avoid public pressure campaigns aimed at ministers. Work quietly with private security and accept the limits of the system. That approach would not solve every problem, but it would make his argument look less like a public battle and more like serious risk management. Instead, the security question keeps becoming part of the Sussex brand of grievance. Harry has connected it to his father, to the palace, to the press, to his children's relationship with their grandfather, and to his own sense of being unprotected by the country he once served. That may be emotionally sincere, but it is strategically damaging. The more he frames security as proof of family rejection, the more it stops looking like a neutral risk question. It begins to look like another front in the royal feud. The role of the Home Secretary is especially sensitive. Reporting has suggested that Harry has tried to communicate with senior political figures or seek movement through ministerial channels. But Ravek decisions are supposed to be independent, specialist, and based on security assessment, not personal lobbying.
And we come back to this fundamental thing, Kinsey, which is if he gets security or he offers to pay for it, that opens up a huge Pandora's box of problems for every foreign national or VIP who goes, you know what, he's not a serving royal, he's not doing royal duties, he doesn't have a job, he just thinks he's important, and he's coming to the UK and he has some money and he wants to throw it for royalty level protection and sovereign intelligence access. We've talked about that before. And ultimately, I'll pay for mine too.
Yeah, right. And then so all the gloves.
The Guardian has reported that the Home Secretary does not contribute to individual Ravek decisions. That separation is important. If a minister was seen to bend an intelligence-based process because a famous prince applied pressure, the consequences would be severe. Every future decision would look political. Every denied applicant would ask why Harry got special treatment. Every approved protection package would be vulnerable to suspicion. This is where Sir Clive Alderton's name enters the conversation. Harry wrote about him critically in Spare, and Alderton has been reported as a member of Ravek. His planned departure from his role as King Charles's principal private secretary has renewed speculation among some Sussex supporters about whether individual palace figures have stood in Harry's way. But that reading is too simple. Ravek is not a one-person machine. It involves an established framework and multiple institutional voices. Even if one person has influence, the process is not supposed to be decided by personal dislike or palace politics. Blaming one aide may be emotionally satisfying for Harry's supporters, but it does not explain the legal rulings or the broader security context. It may also hurt Harry's position. Publicly criticizing people who sit near the machinery of royal and state decision-making is not a clever way to build trust. If Harry wants the system to treat him as a serious security applicant, his public attacks on the institution and its figures make the atmosphere more difficult. That does not mean officials punish him for criticism. They should not. But human institutions do not operate in a vacuum. Trust, discretion, cooperation, and seriousness all matter in security work. A person who repeatedly turns private processes into public grievance may find that institutions become more guarded around him. The best security clients are usually cooperative. They listen to advice, accept restrictions, and understand that protection sometimes means inconvenience. A close protection team can only do so much if the principal insists on publicity, changes plans suddenly, rejects guidance, or uses risky movements to make a point.
And this is why the Risk Management Board, we're hearing in the press, they aren't able to address Harry's issue right now because they're having to take priority actions on people that are more justified to have potential security.
I mean, reading this entire article from the Mirror, this is from my friend Russell Myers, it makes you think the whole world doesn't revolve around.
Professional protection begins with rules. Where will you go? Who knows the schedule? What details are public? what happens if plans change? Who has final authority in an emergency? If the protected person does not accept the structure, the risk rises. That principle applies to royalty, politicians, celebrities, and private clients alike. This is one reason the cancelled event issue matters. The source transcript claimed Harry and Meghan cancelled several UK engagements after a legal setback, and it framed that as selfish. A more careful version is this: when public figures cancel planned charity or public interest events at short notice, the consequences ripple outward. Venues may have prepared for weeks. Security teams may have completed advance work, staff may have rearranged schedules, beneficiaries may have been excited, media plans may have been built around the appearance. If the cancellation is unavoidable, people understand. But if it appears connected to personal disappointment or a wider publicity battle, it can make the principle look unreliable and self-focused. For Harry, that is dangerous, because reliability is one of the few things that could rebuild public trust. The public can forgive disagreement, it can even forgive family conflict over time. What it struggles with is a pattern in which every event seems to become about Harry's hurt, Harry's safety, Harry's status, Harry's relationship with the king, Harry's court cases, or Harry's frustration with Britain. If he wants his causes to be taken seriously, the causes have to come first. That means Invictus cannot be the backdrop to a security campaign. Veterans should not become secondary characters in another Sussex narrative. The same logic applies to Meghan. When Meghan joins Harry at major events, attention often shifts from the mission to the couple's image. Clothes, hand-holding, body language, arrival shots, backstage interactions, and whether she is using the moment to promote a softer public profile.
Kinsey, because the people in RMB and Ravek will just be, I won't do the hand signals, but I'm sure the viewers can guess what those hand signals might be.
Right.
Might be one finger on the hand that is protruding. Yeah, or two maybe. It won't make a blind bit of difference. Even with Shabana Mahmood, Yvette Cooper, she's gone, she's history. She has no sway whatsoever. Shabana Mahmood, I doubt she could talk to them and say, hey guys, can you do us a favor? And they're going to go, no, we're going to carry on doing what we want to do.
Yeah, and because it was her in December of 2025 that told Harry she would get.
Supporters see a loving wife standing beside her husband. Critics see a couple who cannot let the event be bigger than themselves. The truth may vary by moment, but the perception problem is real. For an organization like Invictus, the optics can become complicated. Harry brings star power, but he also brings a media storm. Security professionals would likely look at Harry's UK visits in layers. The first layer is intelligence. Is there a credible, specific threat? The second is exposure. Will he be in public, and how predictable are his movements? The third is environment. Is he at a secure royal residence, a controlled venue, a public street, a court building, or a charity space? The fourth is behavior. Is the schedule disciplined and private, or is it being briefed and dramatized? The fifth is consequence. What would be the impact if something went wrong? Each layer matters. The public often wants a simple yes or no, but security rarely works that way. That layered approach also explains why being armed is not always the answer. In some countries and some threat environments, armed protection is essential. In others, careful planning, secure vehicles, private arrivals, venue control, and low visibility may be more appropriate. Armed officers do not magically remove risk. They introduce legal responsibilities, coordination needs, and potential escalation. A serious protection plan should not begin with, we need guns. It should begin with, what is the risk and what is the proportionate response? Harry's desire for armed police protection may be understandable emotionally, but it is not automatically justified operationally for every UK visit. The court process already accepted that Ravek could take a bespoke approach after Harry's change in status. That is a crucial point. Harry did not simply lose because the court lacked sympathy.
Completely independent.
Well, this is the joy of the composition of the RMB, that you've got people from various different branches. So you've got the royal household, you've got MI5, you've got counterterrorism, you've got the protective unit within the Metropolitan Police. You've got all these different people who are going to come together. It's like a jury in a major sort of court case, and it's going to be the jury with a foreman who are going to basically all put their opinions across to each other, when they break from the courtroom and say, yeah, I think he's guilty, and the other one going, no, I don't think he is. And the same will be applied in terms of weighing up who they have as a majority.
He lost because the court accepted that an expert body had room to make a different decision based on his changed role. He is still a prince, still the king's son, and still globally known, but he is also a privately funded, non-working member of the royal family living abroad. That hybrid status is precisely the problem. He wants some of the protections of public duty while living outside the obligations of public duty. That tension sits at the heart of the entire post-royal Sussex story. Harry and Meghan wanted independence, commercial freedom, control of their image, and distance from the institution. But certain forms of royal infrastructure remained useful. Titles, status, security expectations, public sympathy, palace access, and global attention. The security fight is one of the clearest examples. Harry no longer wants the job, but he wants the system to recognize his importance in a way that looks very close to the old job. Critics see that as wanting privilege without duty. Supporters see it as the state failing to protect a man whose risk did not disappear just because he changed roles. There is truth on both sides, but the balance has shifted. In 2020 and 2021, many people could understand the uncertainty around the Sussexes' transition. Their lives had changed quickly. The pandemic complicated movement and the security arrangements were still being tested. By 2026, however, the argument feels more settled. Harry has lived abroad for years. He has private security. He has traveled to countries with significant security challenges. He has appeared at public events. He has continued media and legal battles. The state has not returned him to automatic royal protection, and the courts have not forced it to do so. At some point, the dispute stops looking like transition pain and starts looking like refusal to accept a new reality. The Anne Widdecombe case makes that new reality even clearer. When a country is reviewing the safety of politicians and staff after a fatal attack, Harry's complaint has to compete with people who cannot opt out of public service. MPs.
Alderton has resigned, who is, one of the king's most trusted advisors.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry's pretty scathing about him in Spare. And some commentators have pointed to Sir Clive's role on Ravik. But I've recently said to Page 6 that I thought it was important to remember that Ravik is not a one-man operation. Yep. These are made collectively under an established framework. So it's overly simplistic to suggest Alderton alone stood between Harry and the outcome.
Cannot simply stop being accessible without damaging democracy. Former prime ministers cannot erase the decisions that made them targets. Staff in constituency offices cannot always control who walks through the door. Harry, by contrast, can choose whether to travel, where to appear, how public to be, and how much to disclose. That choice does not eliminate his risk, but it does affect how the state should prioritize him. This is why the phrase "the world does not revolve around Harry" resonates, even if it sounds harsh. The point is not that Harry's safety is unimportant. The point is that a national protection system must serve the public interest first. It must protect people whose roles expose them on behalf of the country. It must respond to current threat intelligence. It must allocate limited specialist officers to the most urgent cases. A prince who left public duty cannot expect the system to reorder itself around his preferred timetable, especially when other threats have become more immediate. There is also a financial dimension. Public protection is expensive. It is not only salaries. It is training, overtime, vehicles, planning, residential measures, intelligence coordination, firearms capability, and the opportunity cost of assigning officers to one person instead of another. Even if Harry paid some costs, the state would still be providing scarce public capability. That is why money alone cannot settle the question. The resource is not merely cash. It is authority, expertise, and capacity. When capacity is limited, entitlement matters. Harry's defenders may argue that his royal birth creates permanent risk and permanent responsibility. They may point out that he did not choose to be Diana's son, did not choose to be born into the monarchy, and did not choose the public obsession that follows him. They may argue that the threats against him, Meghan, and the children are not imaginary. They may also say that if something terrible happened, the same critics now dismissing his concerns would ask why more had not been done. Those are serious points. No responsible commentary should pretend there is zero danger.
A meaningful way, because that is what's being reported, that Harry is going to continue to rally the Home Secretary. If Harry gets the answer he wants after lobbying ministers, wouldn't that immediately raise questions about political interference and what's supposed to be an intelligence and risk-based process?
Absolutely. It's the perfect oxymoron. I mean, and also it would show the integrity of the Home Office, that they could be persuaded by a third party to influence a particular system and construction which is in place already and is serving a perfectly and is fit for purpose and delivers on what it needs to do, and safeguarding the taxpayers' money and safeguarding the individuals that merit having that protection. So, yeah.
But serious concern does not require accepting Harry's preferred solution. The state can acknowledge risk and still decide that private security plus case-by-case police support is proportionate. It can review intelligence without granting automatic armed protection. It can secure royal residences without escorting Harry everywhere. It can protect specific high-risk events without restoring the old full-time package. That middle ground may be frustrating for Harry, but it is exactly how a risk-based system is supposed to work. The bigger question is whether Harry wants a risk-based answer or a status-based answer. A risk-based answer changes depending on circumstances. A status-based answer says, I am Prince Harry, therefore I should have this protection. The courts and the government have leaned toward the first model. Harry's public arguments often sound closer to the second. That mismatch explains why the dispute never ends. He is asking the system to treat his identity as the central fact. The system is saying his current role and specific threat picture matter more. For King Charles, the issue is painfully delicate. He is Harry's father, and he may want to see his son and grandchildren without the constant shadow of security arguments. But he is also the king, and Buckingham Palace has repeatedly had to maintain that Ravek is not simply controlled by him. If Harry suggests that Charles could fix the security issue by intervening, it places the king in an impossible position. If Charles says nothing, Harry's supporters may accuse him of coldness. If Charles appears to intervene, it risks undermining an independent process and creating political controversy. That is why this issue is so damaging to family reconciliation. It turns a father's relationship with his son into a constitutional pressure point. For Prince William, the view is likely even colder. William has spent years watching Harry turn private pain into public argument. Security, like the Diana narrative, becomes another area where Harry's personal story creates institutional consequences. William is not only a brother, he is the heir.
So the first thing I would want to do is sit down, and I do this with my clients, even if they've had security before delivered by whoever, I don't care. And I will sit down and say, these are Will's rules. These are the rules that you need to follow by, and we need to agree to right now before we do anything. And if we can't agree to those rules, I am not your guy. I'm not the guy who can protect you. I'm going to want to make your life as liberal and as free as I possibly can. But my job is fundamentally to make sure you live and you survive and you don't.
He has to think about the monarchy's long-term stability, public money, precedent, and whether the Sussexes can be trusted with proximity to the institution. If Harry's every visit becomes a battle over status, William has little incentive to reopen family closeness. The cruel irony is that Harry's strongest path forward would probably involve less drama, not more. If he quietly accepted private security for most visits, cooperated with authorities, limited public briefings, kept family meetings private, and allowed Invictus to be about veterans, he might slowly rebuild credibility. Over time, the public might see a man who has adjusted to his new life while still honoring his causes. Instead, each new security story reopens the old wounds: royal exit, entitlement, family estrangement, press hostility, court defeats, and the question of whether Harry ever truly accepted the consequences of leaving. The same applies to Meghan and the children. If Harry argues that Archie and Lilibet cannot safely come to Britain, then every image trip or private movement becomes part of the evidence people use to test that claim. If the children can visit quietly under certain arrangements, critics will say the crisis was overstated. If they cannot visit, supporters will say the system has failed them. Either way, the children become part of the security narrative, which is exactly what Harry says he wants to avoid. The best way to protect them from that narrative may be to stop making the security battle a public family story. In the end, the latest delay in Harry's security review is not just bureaucratic inconvenience, it exposes the central weakness of his case. He is asking for exceptional treatment at a time when the category of exceptional risk is crowded. Former prime ministers, serving politicians, MPs' staff, high-profile public figures, and people facing current credible threats all compete for attention inside a system with finite capacity. Against that backdrop, Harry's royal identity is not enough.
Security, putting yourself, it's like anonymity is the best security.
Stop posting pictures of your beach vacation on Instagram, Meghan.
Absolutely, and Portugal and wherever else that he's been going. I mean, it really comes down to privacy doesn't justify necessarily, or publicity doesn't necessarily align to security. So the fact that he wants loads of publicity, you pay for the security that you have to have. I've got some clients who are really well-known names, and people will see them on their movie screens, who are super private. They do their thing for the press, they do their thing for their fans, but other than that, they keep themselves so low key. And therefore, as a direct result, the security that they have to have is very low key also. So if you want to go out there and you want to grandstand,
his personal fear is not enough. His willingness to pay is not enough. The question is whether the state, using intelligence and professional judgment, believes he needs that level of official protection now. That answer may not satisfy Harry. It may never satisfy him. But a democratic state cannot build protection policy around emotional satisfaction. It has to build it around risk, proportionality, public duty, and limited resources. Harry may remain angry, his supporters may remain convinced that he has been abandoned, his critics may continue to see entitlement. But the reality is plainer than the drama around it. He left the role that justified automatic protection, he lost the legal argument over the old arrangement, and the system now has more urgent pressures to weigh until Harry accepts that every visit to Britain will carry the same shadow. Not simply the question of whether he is safe, but the question of whether he still understands the difference between being important and being entitled.